And this is the story of how everything I thought was solid crumbled in one afternoon. I used to believe that time could heal anything. That if you just held on long enough, the sharp edges of pain would dull, and the weight on your chest would lift even if just a little. But I've learned that some wounds don't fade. They grow with you. They change who you are in the silence that follows. It's been 4 years. 4 years since the version of me I used to know disappeared, the woman who danced barefoot in the kitchen, who took long drives to nowhere, who laughed without flinching. Now I sit and remember, not because I want to, but because pretending it never happened is worse. People tell me I'm strong, that I'm brave, but most days I'm just trying to breathe. That day started like any other. The smell of coffee in the air, a to-do list scrawled on a post-it. My older sister Melissa was supposed to visit. We hadn't spoken in weeks after a fight about Mom's birthday. I had texted her, "Please just come. Let's not let this grow bigger." She sent back a thumbs up. I didn't know she'd been drinking. I didn't know she was still angry. I didn't know she'd take my car. People ask what I remember. Honestly, not much. Her voice raised, mine too. The car starting. Me reaching for the door. Then nothing. Just the crunch of trees, the shattering glass, and the cold. When I woke up in the hospital, I couldn't feel my legs. "It's a miracle you're alive," aren't they said. But all I heard was, "You'll never walk again." That was the day Melissa broke more than just bones. She broke trust. She broke me. And yet, I'm still here. And this time I'm ready to talk about it. If I had known that day would be the dividing line between my past and everything that followed, I might have looked at it differently. I might have hugged her tighter. Or maybe not opened the door at all. Melissa arrived 2 hours late, sunglasses on despite the cloudy sky. Her jaw set in that way I'd come to recognize she was ready for a fight. She always walked into a room like the volume had been cranked up. Everything about her demanded attention. Even her silence felt loud. We used to be close. We shared a room growing up, whispered secrets under blankets, planned our escapes from this small town like we were plotting a revolution. But something shifted after Dad died. Grief hit us in opposite ways. I withdrew into order. She unraveled into chaos. When she missed Mom's birthday dinner 2 weeks ago, it wasn't the first time. But this time I had called her out. Texted her things I probably shouldn't have said. And when she replied with nothing but a thumbs up, I knew she was still angry. Now here she was, standing in my doorway with that forced smile and an energy that made my stomach twist. I offered her coffee. She asked if I had something stronger. I didn't. We sat in silence at first. She lit a cigarette on the porch, even though she knew I hated the smell. The air between us was thick, not with words, but with everything we hadn't said. Then, like a spark to gasoline, it started. She mocked me for being the responsible one, accused me of thinking I was better than her, said I hid behind my perfect life. I snapped back, told her at least I showed up for the people who mattered. It got ugly, fast. I should have asked her to leave. I should have walked away, but I didn't. I followed her outside when she stormed toward my car, yelling, "I'm not done with you." She yanked the driver's side door open. I shouted her name, told her to stop. She turned to look at me, and for a second, I swear I saw something behind her eyes. Pain, desperation, regret. Then she slammed the door shut, started the engine, and I, like an idiot, ran toward her, still yelling. And that was the last thing I remember clearly. The first thing I noticed was the silence. It wasn't peaceful, it was sterile, suffocating, like the kind of silence that comes right before the world tells you something it knows will destroy you. I opened my eyes to bright, flickering fluorescent lights. White walls, the steady beep of machines. My mouth was dry like I'd swallowed dust. My head throbbed with a slow, dull ache. And then, I tried to move. I tried to sit up. Nothing. I tried to lift my legs. Nothing. Panic rose like a tidal wave. My heart pounded in my chest. I blinked rapidly, trying to understand what was happening. My arms, they moved. Barely, but my legs. I felt nothing. No weight, no tension. Just emptiness. That's when the nurse entered. A young woman with tired eyes and a practiced smile. She spoke softly, like someone who's done this many times before. "You're safe," she said. "You're in St. Luke's Medical Center. You were in an accident. We've been monitoring you closely." "Accident?" My voice cracked, dry and foreign in my own throat. She hesitated. "You were in a car crash. You sustained significant injuries to your spine." My heart raced. My fingers gripped the edge of the thin sheet covering me. I can't feel my legs," I whispered. The nurse's smile faltered. "I'll get the doctor." Minutes passed, or hours. Time lost all meaning. When the doctor came in tall, mid-40s, serious eyes, he didn't sugarcoat it. "Claire," he began, "the crash caused trauma to your thoracic spine. There was swelling and partial severing of the spinal cord. At this point, we're classifying your injury as a T6 level complete spinal cord injury." I stared at him, trying to make sense of the words. Spinal, cord, complete. "What does that mean?" I asked, my voice barely audible. He looked down, then back at me. "It means you won't walk again." I didn't cry. Not right away. My mind went blank. The words bounced around inside my skull but refused to settle. My mother came in a few minutes later. Her face pale, red eyes. She held my hand, kissed my forehead, called me her brave girl. But I wasn't brave. I was shattered. And more than anything, I wanted Melissa to walk through that door and say it wasn't real, that it was a nightmare. But she didn't come. And that silence, that crushing silence, said everything I needed to know. The hospital days bled into each other like ink in water, shapeless, silent, and slow. Mornings started with blood pressure cuffs and whispered vitals. Afternoons brought visitors with flowers they didn't know I was allergic to. And evenings ended with trays of untouched food and the hum of machines that reminded me I was still alive. Melissa never came. At first, I made excuses for her. Maybe she was scared. Maybe she didn't know what to say. Maybe she was recovering from the crash herself. But the doctors had told me she walked away with only a few bruises. Physically, at least. Emotionally, I had no idea, because she never picked up the phone. I stared at the ceiling most nights, wondering if guilt kept her away or if she was just gone. Vanished like she'd always threatened to do when we were kids. Mom tried to stay strong. She'd bring me books I couldn't focus on. Smile even when her eyes told the truth. She kept telling me we'd get through this, that things would get better, that the body adapts, that life doesn't stop. But mine had, completely. Learning to live without the use of my legs wasn't just about the wheelchair, or the physical therapy sessions that left me exhausted and ashamed. It was the loss of control, the inability to reach a light switch, to shower without help, to cry without someone asking if I was okay. I wasn't. The nurses were kind. Too kind. I hated how they looked at me, like I was something fragile, someone to be pitied. Every smile felt like a reminder that I'd lost something I could never get back, and through it all, there was one empty chair that never changed. The one by the window. I kept hoping I'd hear her voice, even if it was just to yell at me again, even if it was just to say she was sorry. But that chair stayed empty. Every single day. I started to wonder if she even felt guilt, or if she told herself the same lie. I sometimes whispered into my pillow at night that it wasn't her fault, that it was just a moment, a mistake, bad timing. But deep down I knew the truth. She stole my future, and then she left me in the ruins of it. The day they told me I'd be discharged from the hospital, I expected relief. Instead, I felt nothing but dread. Hospitals, for all their sterility and routine, had become a kind of safety net. Out there beyond the antiseptic halls and fluorescent lighting was the real world. And in that world, nothing had a manual. I was being transferred to a rehab center 3 towns over. One of the best in the state, the nurse had said, as if that was supposed to make it easier. As if the quality of the gym equipment could make up for the fact that I'd be wheeling into a place full of strangers, without Melissa, without certainty. Mom helped pack my things. She folded every shirt like it still mattered. She spoke softly, as if raising her voice might shatter what little resolve I had left. "I'll come every weekend," she said, brushing my hair back like she used to when I was a child with fever dreams. I nodded but didn't answer. I didn't have the energy to pretend I believed that would be enough. The ride to the rehab center was long and quiet. I stared out the window, counting the trees, the mile markers, the lives happening outside, people jogging, couples arguing, children playing by the sidewalk, all those ordinary things that used to be mine too. When we arrived, a nurse met us at the entrance. Bright smile, clipboard in hand, speaking with the tone of someone used to patience on the edge. She showed me my room, the common area, the therapy schedule. It all felt like orientation for a new life I never asked to live. The first night there, I cried. Not the dramatic, heaving kind. Just soft, steady tears that soaked my pillow in silence. The kind of crying you don't even notice until the sheets are wet. I missed my bed. I missed walking barefoot to the kitchen in the middle of the night for a glass of water. I missed silence without beeping machines and the sterile smell of antiseptic. But most of all, I missed her. Not the Melissa who screamed and slammed car doors. The Melissa from before. The one who used to braid my hair before school. Who used to sneak into my bed during thunderstorms. who used to say, "I'll never leave you, Claire, no matter what." But she had. She'd left me in more ways than one. And now, for the first time since the crash, I stopped asking myself when she would come. I started asking if she ever would. The first time they tried to help me sit up on my own, I thought I was going to vomit. It wasn't just the vertigo, it was the humiliation. There I was, a grown woman with a college degree, a career, a life reduced to needing two strangers to lift me like a fragile doll. My physical therapist's name was Rosa. She had kind eyes, strong arms, and absolutely no tolerance for pity, hers or mine. "You can hate this," she said calmly, bracing my shoulders. "You can scream, but you will do it." And I did scream. Not always out loud, but inside I was roaring. Every stretch, every shift, every failed attempt at balance felt like a betrayal. My body, the one that used to carry me through long work days and spontaneous weekend hikes, now shook, like a leaf from the effort of staying upright for 20 seconds. I remember one day in particular. Rosa had brought out parallel bars. "We're going to practice transfers," she said, her voice chipper like she was talking about baking cookies. I stared at the bars like they were a cruel joke. "What's the point?" I asked. She raised an eyebrow. "The point is not dying in a bed. The point is getting your life back." I hated her a little in that moment, and I also needed her more than I wanted to admit. I wheeled up, planted my palms on the bars, locked my arms, and pushed. Nothing happened. My feet were dead weight. My abs screamed. Sweat beaded at my temple. My shoulders ached. But Rosa didn't flinch. She just said, "Again." I tried, again and again, until finally one day, I managed to lift myself just an inch. But that inch felt like Everest. That night, alone in my room, I stared at my legs. I spoke to them like they could hear me. "You betrayed me," I whispered. "But I'm not giving up." Melissa still hadn't called. Not once. I wanted to scream her name into the void. "Look at what you've done. Look at what I've become." But even in my anger, part of me still wanted her beside me, to see my progress, to tell me I was strong, to say she was sorry. But the silence from her was louder than any therapy session. So I kept pushing. Not for her. Not even for Rosa. For me. Because if I couldn't walk again, I'd damn well learn how to stand. By week 6, my arms had gained definition, and I could lift myself from my chair into bed without assistance. Small victories. But in a world that had stripped me of control, those victories meant everything. Rosa began letting me wheel around the indoor track by myself. "Build your stamina," she'd say, always watching but never hovering. Sometimes I'd go faster than I should, pretending, just for a moment, that I was flying. It was childish, maybe, but it reminded me that I still had momentum, that I hadn't completely stopped moving. The rest of the world, however, had gone quiet. No visitors that week. Mom had caught a bad cold and didn't want to risk exposing me. The nurses were kind, but they had dozens of other patients. The therapists rotated. Rosa stayed consistent, a rock in a sea of change. And Melissa? Still no word. No calls, no texts, not even a letter. So I wrote her one. I didn't plan to, it just spilled out one night, my fingers trembling as they tapped against the keys of the center's shared laptop. "Dear Melissa, you haven't come. I don't know why. Maybe you're ashamed. Maybe you think I hate you. Maybe you hate me. But I need you to know I remember everything. I remember the look on your face when you slammed the car door. I remember screaming your name as you turned the key. I remember chasing after you like a fool who still thought blood meant something. And then I remember nothing until pain, metal, and silence. You broke me. But here's the part you won't believe. I don't hate you. I miss you. I miss your voice. I miss your terrible jokes. I miss the way you used to paint my nails like it was some sacred ritual. I keep asking myself who I'm becoming now. Am I someone who forgives you? Am I someone who lets this turn to stone in her chest? Or do I let the fire burn? I don't have the answer. Not yet. But I needed to write this, even if you never read it, even if it ends up deleted with the rest of the unsent drafts in my life. Claire, I didn't print it, didn't mail it, just saved it to a USB and tucked it into the drawer by my bed. Maybe one day I'd send it, maybe one day she'd care. But for now, it was just for me, and for the first time in weeks, I slept through the night. It was a Tuesday morning, gray sky. Light drizzle tapping on the windows when I heard the knock, not the kind of knock that's confident or routine. It was hesitant, almost apologetic. I assumed it was one of the nurses, maybe a new volunteer. I wheeled myself over and pulled the door open, and froze. Melissa. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her hair was tied back like she hadn't had time to care about how she looked. Her jacket was too thin for the rain. Her eyes were red. She didn't speak. Neither did I. For a full 10 seconds, we just stared. My hands gripped the sides of the wheelchair tighter than necessary. Her lips trembled, but no words came. Then finally I spoke. "You found your way here." Her shoulders dropped. "I didn't know if I should come." "That makes 2 of us." She looked down at the floor. "I'm sorry. It wasn't enough. Not nearly. But it was something." I backed up and gestured for her to come in. She walked slowly, like each step cost her something. She sat on the edge of the visitor's chair, the one by the window that had remained empty for so long. The one I swore I wouldn't stare at anymore. We didn't jump into the crash, or the screaming, or the silence. Instead, she asked how I was doing, what therapy was like, if the nurses were treating me well. I answered with calm, measured words. It felt like talking to a stranger wearing my sister's face. After a while, the air got heavy. She looked up, eyes glassy. "Claire, I never meant for that to happen. I was angry, stupid. You were trying to protect me, and You didn't even come to the hospital," I interrupted. She flinched. "I couldn't." "You wouldn't." She nodded, accepting the correction. "I hated you," I whispered. "I begged for you. I imagined what I'd say when I saw you again. And now you're here and none of the words fit." She blinked, and a tear slid down her cheek. "I didn't know how to face you." I leaned forward, my voice low. "Then why now?" Her answer was barely audible. "Because I still love you." Silence again. But this time it wasn't cold. It was heavy with history, with memories, with pain that didn't have a shape yet. I didn't hug her. I didn't cry. I just looked out the window. "I don't know if I forgive you," I said finally. "But you're here, and maybe that's where it starts." Melissa didn't stay long. She left after 20 minutes with the same unsure steps she came in with. We didn't make promises. We didn't hug goodbye. But for the first time in months, the chair by the window didn't feel so haunting anymore. That night I couldn't sleep. Not because I was angry, not even because I was sad, but because I finally felt something shift. Up until that point, I had anchored my pain in her absence. She left me. She ruined me. She didn't care. But now she was no longer a ghost. She had weight. She breathed. She cried. She was real again. And that meant I had to decide what to do with her. The next morning, Rosa noticed. She always did. "You're quieter today," she said, as she adjusted my hand straps for upper body work. "I saw my sister yesterday." Her eyebrows rose, but she didn't ask questions. She just nodded. "She left me," I added. "And now she's back, sort of." "I don't know what to do with that." "You don't have to do anything yet," Rosa said. "Just breathe differently." That line stuck with me. Breathe differently. So much of rehab had been about rewiring instincts, turning effort into habit, learning new patterns, new postures, new ways of getting through the day. Maybe forgiveness was like that too. Not a moment, but a movement, a gradual shift. I started journaling again. Small thoughts. Some bitter, some soft. I wrote letters to Melissa I didn't send. Letters to myself. Even one to the version of me that existed before the accident. Full of advice and warnings I knew she would never have listened to. And every day I noticed little changes. I didn't wince when I looked in the mirror. I didn't avoid the hallway where the new patients cried. I didn't flinch when someone said accident in passing conversation. I still cried sometimes, still felt the phantom ache of what I'd lost. But the grief no longer defined me. It was just part of the background noise now. And that, I realized, was progress. I wasn't healed. I wasn't whole. But I was breathing. It's strange how goodbyes in places like these feel heavier than they should. I had been in the rehab center for almost 4 months. 4 months of pain, sweat, screaming muscles, awkward conversations, and quiet nights with too many thoughts. And now I was being discharged. "You're ready," Rosa had said with a soft smile. I wasn't sure if I believed her. I could lift myself into a car, dress myself, manage the chair without help, and even transfer into bed without assistance. On paper, I was independent, but emotionally, spiritually, I still didn't know. Mom arrived early that day. She brought a new cardigan and my favorite tea from home. She kissed my forehead like she had when I was 5. "You did it, baby," she whispered. I didn't respond. I just smiled. The staff gathered briefly to say goodbye, a mix of claps, hugs, and the kind of words people say when they're not quite sure what else to offer. Rosa hugged me last. Her arms felt like stone pillars wrapped in warmth. "You're stronger than you think," she said. Don't let the world convince you otherwise. I promised her I wouldn't. As Mom pushed my suitcase beside me, I took one last look at my room. The beige walls, the humming air vent, the dent in the drawer from when I slammed it during week 2. It wasn't home, but it had held the broken pieces of me long enough for me to start gluing them back together. The drive home was quiet. I stared out the window, watching trees blur by. Unlike the drive to the center, this time I didn't feel dread. Just uncertainty, like someone opening a novel to a chapter they didn't write. Our house looked the same. Same garden gnome by the mailbox. Same crooked step on the porch. Same scent of lavender and old furniture inside. But I wasn't the same. And neither was my room. Mom had rearranged it, made it more accessible. Lower shelves. A new desk. My bed adjusted for easier transfers. She even added soft yellow curtains. The smallest kindnesses always carried the most weight. As I wheeled in and looked around, I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Not sadness, not joy, just presence. Later that evening, I sat by the window. The air smelled like rain. In my lap was the USB I had brought with me, the one that held all the unsent letters. I still hadn't given Melissa hers. Maybe I never would. Or maybe soon. For now, I was home. Not healed, not finished, but home. And sometimes that's enough. The first week home was harder than I expected. People think once you leave the hospital, the hardest part is over. But they don't see the hundreds of tiny challenges that wait, like shadows behind every corner, light switches that are too high, cupboards that are out of reach, rugs that catch on wheels, narrow bathroom doors, stairs. So many stairs in places you forget they even existed. Every task felt like a puzzle I hadn't trained for. Even making tea turned into a 20-minute balancing act between boiling water and maneuvering without spilling. And the silence was different. In the rehab center, there was always some sound nurses talking. Wheels on tile, voices in pain or laughter. Here, it was just me, and the occasional hum of the fridge. Mom tried her best to help, but I could see the exhaustion in her eyes. Not because she didn't want to help, but because watching someone you love struggle when you can't fix, it is its own kind of torture. She'd whisper apologies every time I said I got it. I didn't have the heart to tell her how much I didn't. One afternoon, I wheeled myself to the mailbox. The slope down the driveway felt steeper than I remembered. I gripped the rims tight, feeling gravity pull me faster than I liked. Inside the mailbox was a single envelope. No stamp, no return address. Just my name in handwriting I recognized immediately. Melissa. I froze. My hands trembled as I slid the letter out. Back inside, I laid it on the kitchen table and stared at it like it might explode. I didn't open it that day, or the next. I needed to decide whether I was ready to read whatever version of her was written in those lines. Instead, I distracted myself. Journaling, stretching, rewatching. Old sitcoms with subtitles. Anything but thinking about the letter. But it stared back, quietly, constantly. By day 4, I cracked. It was short. Claire, I don't know if this helps or hurts. I don't know if I deserve to say anything at all. But I need to try. There hasn't been a day I haven't thought about what happened. About you. About what I did. I'll wait. However long it takes. If you ever want to talk, I'll be at the place with the willow tree and the bad coffee. I folded it slowly, set it aside, and for the first time since coming home, I cried. Not out of pain, not even out of anger. Just because I finally felt something that wasn't numb. It took me 3 more days to make up my mind. I kept picturing that willow tree, the one behind Juno's cafe, next to the cracked parking lot with oil stains and weeds. We used to go there every Thursday after school. Melissa would order the strongest coffee they had, and I'd get lemon cake and iced tea. We'd sit under the willow tree and talk about everything or nothing at all. Back then, it was the safest place in the world. Now, I wasn't sure what it would be. On the morning I decided to go, I dressed slowly. Not because it was hard, but because it felt symbolic. I chose the cardigan Mom gave me on my first day back. It still smelled like home. Mom offered to drive me. I said no. She didn't push, just gave me that look, the one that said be careful without saying a word. The rideshare car arrived 5 minutes early. The driver helped me with the ramp, didn't make small talk. I was grateful. As we pulled up to Juno's, my heart began thumping. There it was, exactly the same chipped sign, the same faded yellow door, and just beyond the patio, under the willow tree, Melissa. She stood with her hands in her coat pockets, shifting her weight nervously. Her eyes scanned the parking lot until she saw me, and for a split second the years melted away. We weren't two broken adults. We were kids again, laughing over cake, making up stories about the people walking by. But the moment passed. I wheeled toward her slowly. The gravel crunched beneath me. She looked like she was holding her breath. "Hey," I said. Her lips twitched. "You came. I wasn't sure I would." "Me neither." We both laughed softly, awkward, unsteady, but real. We didn't hug, just stood or sat one beneath the willow like we used to. She handed me a cup of tea. Still remembered my favorite. We didn't talk about the crash, not yet. Instead, we talked about the rain, about how bad Juno's coffee still was, about a show we both secretly watched but never admitted. There were pauses, long, thick silences, but not uncomfortable ones, more like breaths between sentences we hadn't said yet. And then she whispered, "I thought I lost you forever." "You almost did." Her eyes welled up. "I know." I sipped my tea, looked up through the willow branches, swaying gently. "I'm not saying I forgive you," I said. "Not today," she nodded. "I'll take not today." That was enough. We sat there until the sun began to set. The days after seeing Melissa passed like fog, soft and quiet. Nothing dramatic happened. No shouting, no sudden breakdowns. Just breath, space, silence that no longer frightened me. Every morning, I wheeled myself to the window and watched the neighborhood wake up. Dogs barking, kids with oversized backpacks, mail trucks rattling by. Life, ordinary, loud, messy life, kept moving forward. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was left behind. I started doing small things without help, fixing my own breakfast, answering emails I'd ignored for months, reading chapters instead of headlines. Tiny victories. Some days were still hard. My body still ached in strange places. My legs still reminded me of their absence. But the anger that used to burn behind every muscle spasm, it was quieter now. I wrote in my journal again, not out of obligation, but because the pages had become my second spine, holding me up when I felt too heavy. I wrote about Melissa, about the way she looked at me like she wasn't sure I'd bite or cry, about how we sat under that old tree and said everything and nothing. I didn't know if we'd meet again soon, but I knew now that I could face her. That was enough. One night, I stayed up late just to listen to the rain. I used to hate storms, the noise, the unpredictability. But now the sound felt familiar, like a rhythm I once knew but forgot. The storm didn't ask for permission. It just was. Like me, I was no longer waiting to be the person I used to be. I wasn't reaching backward or chasing something lost. I was still here, in this chair, in this room, in this life, and that was the miracle no one ever talks about. Not walking again. Not smiling through the pain, but staying, even when it would have been easier to let go. The first time I went to the grocery store alone, I almost turned back. I sat outside in the parking lot for 5 full minutes, just watching people walk in and out, so easily, so thoughtlessly. They didn't think about ramps, or door width, or where the lowest shelf was. They just moved. But I stayed, and when I finally rolled through those sliding doors, I didn't feel brave. I felt visible. Every glance lingered a little too long. Some people smiled too wide. Others looked away too quickly. I kept my head high. Found the basket that clipped to my chair. Moved through the aisles. Reached what I could. Asked for help when I couldn't. A teenage boy offered to grab a jar for me from the top shelf. He didn't stare. He didn't speak loudly or slowly. Just said, "Need a hand?" Like it was nothing. I almost cried. Outside, the sun felt warmer than it had in weeks. After that, I started going out more. A cafe here. The library. The art supply store with the creaky wooden floor. I wasn't trying to prove anything. Just reminding myself that the world was still mine to move through. I met old friends again. Some were awkward, unsure of what to say. A few were too careful with their words, like I might shatter if they asked the wrong thing. But others were normal. They laughed, teased me. Let me tell my story on my own terms. I even saw someone from high school who hadn't known about the accident. He recognized me instantly, then looked down at the chair. "You look good," he said. "Thanks," I replied. "Took a while to get here." He smiled. "You've always been tough." That night, I wrote something bold in my journal. I'm not broken. I'm rebuilt. And that truth, that quiet, unshakable truth, stayed with me. I wasn't the same Claire from before. I wasn't the Claire from the hospital either. I was something in between. Something stronger. Something softer. It wasn't the return I expected. It wasn't triumphant or cinematic. But it was real. And it was mine. It's strange, isn't it? How life can shatter in a second and still give you time to rebuild. Not back into what you were, but into who you're meant to be. Tonight, I sat by the window again, my cup of tea warm between my palms. The same view I had stared at on the first night home. But it looked different now. Not because the world changed, but because I had. The streetlight flickered outside, catching the silver in Mom's garden wind chime. It danced quietly in the breeze. My phone buzzed beside me. A message from Melissa. Thinking of you. The tree misses you. I smiled. We hadn't spoken much after that day beneath the willow. A few texts, a photo of an old keychain we once shared. But that was okay. Not every wound needs to be closed by the hands that caused it. Sometimes healing comes from simply knowing you survived. And I did. Not just the crash. Not just the rehab. But the slow, silent war afterward. The grief of losing a version of myself. The fear that I'd never feel whole again. The loneliness that filled the space where movement used to live. I survived all of it. And somehow, I learned to love myself in the ruins. That's the part no one prepares you for. That after the tears, the screams, the long nights and longer days, you don't go back to being who you were. You become someone else. Someone who knows what it means to fall apart. And what it takes to rise. I still have bad days. I still get tired. I still reach for things I can't always grab. But now, when I look in the mirror, I don't just see a body in a chair. I see a woman who has walked and rolled through hell and made it back. I see fire and softness and a kind of beauty I never saw before. My name is Claire, and I am not a victim, not a cautionary tale, not a broken girl in a hospital bed. I am still me, and I am just getting started.